So far, we've been on a journey to understand heaps of the history of our taonga that live in archives and museums. It's been such a privilege to see and connect with all of these taonga, to consider their whakapapa and how it connects with our own. So here we are, back at Te Papa Tongarewa, where in episode 1 we learned all about how taonga become a part of our collections here. And today we're going to meet somebody who is an expert in the repatriation or the return of our tipuna and our taonga back to their people.
Ko Emba Aranui Ahau, ko Ngāti Kahungunu me Ngāti Tūwhare Toa o ku iwi. I'm a curator Māori, but prior to that, I spent probably the last 14 years as a researcher for the Karanga Aotearoa repatriation program. And so our mahi was responsible for bringing our tupuna that currently reside overseas, and to bring them home and to bring them back to their people. If you want to look at repatriation and really understand kind of what it is, from a technical perspective, it is the return of something or someone back to their place or country of origin. And so within the Te Papa context, it actually is a little bit more than that. And I think for Te Ao Māori, it's a little bit more than that. And for us, it's about reconciliation, reunification, and reconnection of taonga and tupuna back with us that live today. The vast majority of tupuna that are located overseas that we bring home, they were stolen. Plain and simple, obtained without consent. And a lot of times, under the cover of darkness, behind the backs of communities that scientists or naturalists had befriended, under the guise of, studying the natural flora and fauna of a place. But all the time they're sort of going in, finding out where people's urupara are, burial caves, and just stealing their tupuna. And that's, for me, it was quite hard to deal with when I first started this mahi. It is a hard mahi, and it's quite heavy sometimes, as you can imagine. But actually, it's really rewarding when we see the tupuna that we've worked so hard to bring back from museums overseas actually go home to their people. For me, it's only one part of the journey is to bring them back here to Te Papa, where we hold them temporarily so that we can finish the research and make sure that we know where home is for them. And then we talk to their people and arrange for them to be returned. So for me, that's the most important part of that mahi is when they go home.
But there's a long process to get these taonga home, and a lot of Amber's work is like detective work. I asked her to show me some of the resources she uses to find our tupuna and their taonga origins.
So these are some registration books, pretty standard for museums, and actually it records some of the taonga that we have. We've got quite a number of these, and what I like to do is sort of start off with these registers. Sometimes these are the first time taonga are entered into the museum, and so they can have quite a lot of information. And there are also a number of other types of information that's available. We have accession schedules, which is just a piece of paper that when those taonga came in, they filled it out, and then the numbers were placed into this book. So there's a number of ways in which you can look for information. Papers Past, I think, also is a really good resource, and that's all of our old newspapers of the day. The Colonial Museum usually had a report and information around that, around what taonga came in and who gave them, was usually recorded. So you can also find really good information in that as well.
What kinds of advice do you give to hapu, iwi and whānau who are looking for taonga here in the museum?
So I think the first step I would do is just to look at what we have online. So we have a large number of taonga that are available to look at online. A lot of them aren't provenance, so you're really kind of looking for a needle in a haystack. But sometimes, there are taonga there that have been identified. The other thing would be to have different place names. Sometimes you might be looking for marae names, names of rivers, names of rangatira.
And these would all be associated with taonga?
Yes, they can be, yeah. The other thing, probably the most common thing, is a collector. So if you know, for instance, you had a man that was really well-known collector. So, for instance, the Tairāwhiti area, you have the Black Collection. So that would be a place to start. Try and get an understanding of what is located at other museums that you know of. Find out who those collectors are or where they're associated with, and then use that information to come, to other museums like Te Papa to sort of follow up.
What drives you to stay here and keep these connections and bring our tupuna home? Yeah.
I think, we have to do it. It's our, responsibility. The museum work is not for everybody, but I think it's important that we have Māori within these spaces, and to help facilitate that reconnection. For me, it's about enabling iwi hapu whānau to reconnect with their taonga and their tupuna, and what better people to help do that than their own. I see the future of museology, particularly for our taonga, is that museums, wherever they are in the world, they relinquish that power of the narrative, where it's the museum telling the story of the people. Now it's the people telling the story of the people within the museum space, and you get the real stories, the rawness that you don't get from an outsider's perspective. And I think that's the difference, particularly here. People want to come to a museum to learn about a people, and what better way to do that than through the voice of those people, whether it's through their kōrero, through things like kōrero on the wall or video, or actually the taonga themselves. They are given that ability to speak again, and I guess that's really what mana taonga is about.
What can be more important than returning our tupuna and their taonga back to the communities they come from? I sit with sadness and with grief for all those still left in the lands far away, awaiting for an opportunity to reconnect and return home. And what about us? What else can we explore on our journey together? No doubt there are millions of things that we could talk about. But with one episode left, I think there's a really important question to be answered. When our taonga do return home, when our taonga live amongst our people, what does that look like? How might our tikanga Māori be used with our taonga outside of institutions like Te Papa? It's time for us to leave the city and to go on a bit of a haerenga to te matau a Māui. Kia mautonu mai.